I mean, we have to talk about her cultural heritage. As I was mentioned,
Yeah.
um, first and second questions about where I was from, where I'm from, and how I grew up with, what I grew up with. So, we have to think about our heritage. Heritage in a way, um, are they always positive? Are they always enriching? Which part of the heritage plays a very important role in our identity as Taiwanese? So the title is Cultural Heritage as a Play of Critical Regionalism. And in this part, the reason why I select this project is more about rethinking about culture, culture in terms of religious burial, memories, in a way. So reorientation, meaning that we have to rethink about our heritage in an open mind. We want to think of this heritage not as something that we have to follow, but more something that we want to open up to rethink what part of this heritage belongs to our identity right now and reopen that memory. So we have to think about, I mean, this is, of course, a collection of practice in a way that allowed us to rethink uh, uh, what's our heritage. So on the screen right now, you can see several projects, building on different topography of Taiwan. So we first talk about, how I come to, how, what, when we have this project, how do we, what do we do? How do we get this project? It's through a competition. And the project is actually in north of Taiwan, which is actually about 200 meters, no, sorry, about 1 kilometers away from the seashore. And to think about religion in Taiwan, we have to think about first, the Christian religion is not coming from Taiwan. It's not like most of the part of the world. Christian religion is coming through um, maybe colonies or the invaders. So actually, Christian landed in Taiwan in the 18th century, roundabout. They actually do a lot of good in Taiwan. They went to a lot of regional area there, which are very poor Aborigines, and they help a lot. So I would like to take this project as a um, research and understanding of that role of Christianity that plays in Taiwan. So this is in the very north of Taiwan, and it's facing the ocean. Both projects I'm going to talk about today are facing the ocean. So, of course, our first question is that what kind of main structure we should build or design by the ocean? What is the legacy or heritage of building that is located next to the ocean? The second question we have to ask ourselves is so sacred space nowadays are very different than sacred space 50 years ago. Very different in Taiwan, Iran, whatever is possible. They play a very, very different role. So what is contemporary sacred space nowadays? The third question we have to ask ourselves is the public nature of sanctity. And the way we think about Christianity, the way we think about religion is very different nowadays. So what is the public nature of this religion? So I go through very quickly. There is a loneliness and solitude. We can see from seaside architecture. I particularly like those bunkers and all those fortresses or oil tank or limelight, sitting on the seashore. And surely, our first inspiration is coming from Michelangelo's design of Boston Fortress. This is probably the first design which is actually form follow function in a way. because the form of the architecture has to follow the trajectory of the weaponry or the defense system. Hence, that we will see that most of the seaside architecture plays a very important role on defending the nature or defending the enemy. So in this case, then we have to come back to what is our heritage. Architecture, particularly religious architecture, sacred architecture, the form of the architecture is coming from its religion, coming from its ritual. So we have to say that first we have to pray, and then the praying is a gesture which specialized language, which is Bible. So such gesture creates a form and creates a space that requires to, we need to have a space to allow such a gesture to happen. So a lot of religious architecture is coming from hosting such a special gesture. So gesture specialized Bible. So we can see that, through different period of time, we have different ways of celebrating religion. So pretty much that we have to come back to Germany to think about, can church or religious architecture still plays a very important role as a social conduit. Conduit is a translation of things to meet as a mediator. Because of war, Christianity plays a very important role in the World War I or World War II. So German actually, during this time, churches were all bombed. So they, after World War II, a lot of churches has to rebuild. But can we still believe in religion as a conduit, as a media? Because media is dangerous, because, we can see Nazi as basically a play of media in a way that Christianity become the source or the basis of invasion or discriminality. So at this stage of the architecture design in Germany, or even nowadays, that you can see expression is being excluded in most of our German architecture. German expressionism was quite famous, but in this case, after war, they were castrated with this potential or this power to express themselves. Or I have to say, this is an appropriate reflection of what religion should play, the role of religion should play. It's a very modest, it's a carrier of meaning, but it's no longer as an expression, and it's no longer plays a role as media. It's quite dangerous. So you can see that, I love the German architect Rudolf Schwarz. You can see it's industrial plain. There's no expression, only geometry, almost like mass produced. There's no deep meaning, but there's only a container of sort that expresses contemporary meaning. For instance, on the left hand side, you can see it's a very, very generic 5x8 geometry, but you can see what makes this church interesting. This is actually one of the most favorite church by Raphael Moneo. When he was talking about church, he often took this church as an example. You can see what is quite interesting is the lower right hand side, the darkness, and the upper left hand side, those big windows. If those windows were small, we probably won't see that as a church, because the proportion, because simplicity, because it's inconspicuousness. This church has actually represent the attitude of architect towards church design or religious architecture design. This is probably the most expressive architecture in Germany right now. This is by Gottfried Bohm, and this is the Church of Navages. And this is actually quite interesting. We see that the building itself is quite expressive, but in fact, for him, this is a continuation of the public space of a marketplace. You can see on the sketch on the right hand side is the alleyway on the side, almost drawn as a market, and the whole building is a poche of the darkness. So actually, after war, a lot of architecture has the presentation of bunker, but actually, it's actually a combination of bunker and the topography of all the generic um, um, vernacular houses on the side. So we can see, quite interestingly, inside the church, on the side, it's almost like you walk on the street. It is inversed. You have the pitch roof, you have the balcony, almost like a celebration parade on the street. And the outside of it is just the presentation of inside. And you can see in the front, probably just 600 kilometers away, you have a different culture that celebrates every nuance of the religion and using light to articulate, the sanctuary, the holiness, the more mundane, the everyday life, but the speciality. You can actually very carefully describe your belief in architecture, and architecture is the media, is conduit of such a belief. So what I like most is this architecture, this piece of architecture is by Emil Stefan and Klaus Rossini. And it's almost like a huge, from outside you see nothing but just a huge pitch roof, and the inside is a void of a courtyard. And we can see the outer and the place for the audience to sit are completely changed. And you can see that they sit next to the altar, and actually surround this courtyard is the everyday life. And this building was actually very close to the first church, in the 2031 AD. So we come back to talk about our church. Sorry, this took a bit long.
It's fine.
So the first question is about, building a church in Taiwan. The lands are very sacred in Taiwan, so the land price is very high. Because we don't have so much land that is occupiable or usable. So when we build a church, we have to think about the church cannot be like the church we saw in Germany. They are touching the earth. They are pretty much, they have to verticalize. So you have to see the Dangan Church we built is 50 meters, but Notre Dame is 75 meters, although Notre Dame is one building, but the Tamkang Church has a lot of function inside. So first we have to deal with the verticality, and then the first constraint or first task is how do we design a church that requires 600 people for gathering within a 20 and 30, 20 meters, 30 meter perimeter. So that's quite difficult. And as well, we saw from all the building outside, sitting on the seashore, we can see there's always this sanctuary provided by this fortress-like building. So we decided very early on to use exposed concrete to face this more harsh climate or topographical condition. So in order to actually build a tower of 50 meters with concrete, which is very difficult because it's in situ cast concrete, because of the earthquake in Taiwan, we need to actually think about lowering the weight of the building. So we actually built all the cantilever inside the building with this bubble or this balloon inside the floor deck to reduce the weight. So the building will not be so heavy when it reaches 50 meters. So functionally, what we have to understand is that, there were two parts. First is this 3-meter zone, which we created as a donuts, and second would be inside. The 3-meter zone will be more or less like a mediate or like a buffer between outside and inside. And yet it provides us the chance to create a passage all the way to the function upstairs. So you can see the building is almost like a poche, void out design. You can see here on the third floor, fourth floor is the main gathering hall. On the top will be the fifth and sixth floor will be for the children and youth church. On the top would be office building. On the very top, there would be a wedding and Baptist church. So on the ground floor, as open as we can. It's almost like a promenade all the way to the third and fourth floor. And then when we think about the religion in Taiwan, it's pretty different than my experience of religious space in Germany. When we are in Germany, it's quite quiet, but in Taiwan, there's a lot of gossip, singing. There's a lot of rock and roll concert to attract younger believers. And so you can see that there's a lot of events happening in this castle. And we will like to say, sometime when we think of those holy or sacred space in Germany or in Europe, you will see the main aisle and having a light coming in with through the rose windows. Well, quite dramatic. But here, the pathway is where where we want to find this elevation of consciousness somehow through the opening of the window and the light. But if you see the main gathering hall, it's actually almost like a concert hall. And upstairs here would be where the children, and those are all in need children. They are all from very poor family or children who has learning disability. So this is almost like a social welfare from the church side. Upstairs is actually more or less for teenagers. They can gather band and practice there on top of their office space. On the very top is their Baptist church, and you can see that in the middle there's a cross, and the horizontal bar is where the water come out. On the niche on the right hand side is where the priest will stay for the people to pass by. And this church, and on top of the ceiling, there's a cross, almost like a cross of light, and the cross pressing the ceiling in a way, or the skylight in a way, almost like the church is actually carrying the light of cross. And we designed the cross in a way, the light will come down at 2:00 in the afternoon when most of the time when the Baptist ritual is performed. The light will be cast exactly on top of these kids, or the one who is baptized. We have actually, in terms of materiality, thinking about how do we use one material and with different surface of the material to apply to different use of the space. So you can see in the entrance, there are 3 types of concrete. First is on the right-hand side, it's the very smooth exposed concrete. On the floor, we had the poured concrete and just sanded with polished surface with wax. And then on the wall right here is a story of the first missionary landed in Taiwan, which is actually carved by digital application. And then on the top, we can see that outside the church, the foam board of the wood is actually was very rough pattern. So we can see that you can see the wood pattern on the surface. On the very top, we have very rough board for this altar. And then inside, you have, wedding couples to confess to. It's almost like a confession room. And then outside we have this very rough, almost like a brutalist architecture kind of treating surface to catch more roughness in contrast to the lightness of the water. So this is how we think of the building as carrying the cross rather than carrying the light, which is the light of the cross, like Jesus. Sorry, Marty, I have to call to talk about Christianity. So that is our church. I'll go much faster for the next project, which will be the.
But
Sorry,
yeah,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question with regards to the design, because what's unique about this church is that you actually stack the spaces one on top of the other. Yeah, was it? I understand it's based on the program, but was it limited based on the size of the lot, or was there another intent there why you stack the floors? Because most churches are like 1 story or 2 stories high.
Yeah, as I mentioned that, because the land are quite expensive and
Yeah.
most of the land should be developed. There's a certain kind of floor area you should be able to build on land. So to acquire a huge piece of land to build 1 or 2 floor is too expensive. So pretty often that most of the metropolitan area you can see, like in Taipei or in most of the big cities, you have high-rise building because the lands are more expensive. So most of the church we build in Taiwan are almost like more or less 10 to 12, 10 to 14 floor high to be able to accommodate the use and the program they require.
And maybe lastly for me, because also in churches there is this processional aspect to it, like how you enter the church. How were you able to manage to address that, considering that it also has like certain spaces that you had to accommodate?
And there are two pathways, as most of, I don't know, I can only say about the Taiwanese, they actually don't like to walk. There are reason for it because it's always warm, it's very hot, it's always, sweaty because humidity is always more than 90 degrees and the temperature is always more than 32 degrees, 35 degrees. So to ask Taiwanese to walk is like to kill them. If they walk to 7-Eleven, which is 100 kilometers, 100 meters away, they would not go. Rather than those, but in Germany, we walk. And walk, I think, is one of the things that you can experience architecture properly.
Yes.
It takes time to understand architecture. So we kind of start with encouraging them to walk. You don't have to walk up, you have to walk down, for instance. So we actually purposefully design a pathway in which they're able to walk up and then see the ocean and walk up to the church, see the activity of the second floor, which is exhibition space, then walk up to their main church. But most of the people actually took the elevator. There are 4 elevators. We have calculated within 10 minutes, we're able to go with 4 elevators, each elevator carrying 20 people, that, the church can be full within, 10 minutes. It's all in our calculation. But luckily, most people walked up there because the experience itself is quite spiritual and it's quite enlightening. So they need something, they need some encouragement to walk. So that was quite, that was actually something that intentionally we do, and that was quite successful at the end.
Before we move on, can I ask about the window pattern on the facade? It looks a bit randomized. I want to know that it was based on the light reflection on the interior, or do you want to showcase the case study that you were explaining about how it looks like being inside the city and getting this experience?
You can see this is a great question. I've been often asked this question, and sometime to answer this question, we have to go back to the constellation, how we create a composition in a way that is not regular, but with randomness, which can be read. There's organized chaos inside. I think oxymoron plays a very important role in our design, in a way that, how can it be so random but organized? In most part, for the next project as well, how can it be so heavy but when so light? When we do architecture, when it's so heavy, how can it flow? that's basically what we all try to do as an architect. In this case, there are several clues that you can look at. You can see there are always long windows. And each floor, for instance, here, there, there are on every floor, for every 20 meters, there's a long window. And it was actually required to have such a long window because when we cast concrete, we cast floor by floor to prevent the concrete from overflow or to control the quality of the concrete. We need these vertical parts to gap the pouring of the concrete. So we need to have, every time we turn the corner, we need to stop it somewhere. Every time we turn the corner, basically you have to think about the pouring. It's almost every time we pour L shape. So vertical has to be there. And then this is actually for the escape. It's always about 60 centimeter. It's about 80 centimeter wide, 120 high. It's for the fire escape. So people can escape from the window. The rest of it is two types of window. One is bigger window of 180 by 90, 180 by 180 roundabout. It's for the offices inside. When we come to balcony, these are just random. I just open it as much as I can when the law is allowed. So you can see this part, it's all balcony, but the law is required that we can open 1/3 of the surface. So this is a calculation. So actually all parts are part of the reason, and the reason are the constitution of programmatic requirements that we arrange in a way to reflect on the surface of the facade. And this is actually the difficulty of bringing a tower, bring the sense of sacred into a tower, because the tower is quite mundane, everyday building. You just need regular windows like this one. So we were able to have this buffer donuts to give the window a chance to breathe and to change, to mediate. So that was the reason why we were able to do it this way.
Amazing. Thank you. And how long
Welcome.
does it took to build this building?
Design phase is 4 years. It took them 7 years to build it. Wow. The reason why it took so long is not because the construction is low, because every year they have to gather the church is built through donation. So they have a quota. Each year, they will have like maybe 10 millions of donation, euro-wise. And, if they can't reach the quota, we stop. So we always follow their quota, follow their donation. So they were quite incredible. They were able to do this within 7 to 8 years period of time. So we actually follow their donation, our building process.
Amazing. And my last question here, do you feel that this building is a monument in the area? Like it's well known through people and they just gonna example it for like making a point there?
Yeah, to think about monument, it's actually a subject that I would like to continue explore with the next project. Because, I don't think I was ever intend to build a monument. And just as that, I was just never intend to build iconic architecture. Most of my works are more or less inconspicuous somehow, not so obvious. But when we think about monument, it requires certain kind of uniqueness and singularity to be such a monument. And actually, I like this image only because the proportion of the buildings are quite equal. You can see how it's been developed. You can see the roof is always there because it's required 9-meter roof scape, which is required in Taiwan. You can see most of the building on the lower floors are more translucent, transparent, or physically accessible. Only the window parts open differently. So there's a similarity which I like that can be only seen with the context in mind. And it's almost trying to read this, of course, this is a monument. The church is always a monument, but I really try to do it differently, by alternating the opening of the facade and give it a less temple-like feeling and more a feeling which is close to the context, So that's, in a way, yes, it's a monument because, but I would like to see that, a fortress is a monument as well, rather than the church. So, when we look into medieval city, for instance, doesn't matter it's in the Middle East or in Europe, we often look at the monuments, we often look at the church, but I would like to see the fortress, the wall as a monument. So this is a presentation of a wall, so if we see the celebration wall as a monument, then I would say this is what we are intending to do, but rather than the scene, for instance, like in the middle of time, the church, the castle as a monument, in a way that I would like to see this more as something more inconspicuous and in a way more for the public. In short, because it's so distinctive, sure, it's a monument, but by mistake, maybe.